Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to this regularly scheduled meeting of the Planning Commission for Tuesday, March 25th, the year of 2025. I'd like to open the meeting at 7:30. May we please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And may I have roll call, please?
Yes. Mr. Carpenter is absent. Mr. Fitzer, absent. Mr. Hara?
Here.
Present. Mr. Kucera?
Here.
Mr. Nushai?
Here.
Ms. Redmond?
Here.
Mr. Scott is absent. Mr. Solomon? Here. And Mr. Tinley?
Here.
All right. We have a
Thank you.
quorum.
Thank you. Agenda item number 4 is approval of tonight's agenda. Does anybody have any problems with tonight's agenda? I'll just approve it as it stands then. And we'll move on to agenda item number 5, which is approval of the regular meeting minutes from February 25th, 2025. That's our last meeting that we had here.
I will make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of February 25th, 2025.
Support.
Motion support. Does anybody else find any changes in it? I found an error.
What was that error?
It's minor, but if you go on page 2 of it, where it's nomination for vice chairman, for Redmond being commissioner, it's motion by Scott, and it was all, but on the votes, my name was absent from the A's list. I did vote A on it, and I just, for some reason, my name was left off.
Oh, you saying you voted aye on Redmond as vice chair? That's
Yes,
what you're-
correct. Yeah. Shows up in every other case I voted, but just that's the only change I can see. So if we can get that corrected before we certify it by our new secretary or whatever we do to it.
I wouldn't sign off on it otherwise.
Okay, and then we'll open it for public discussion.
Well, we gotta have a vote on the
Oh.
motion to approve the
Oh,
minutes.
that's, all right, roll call, please.
Okay. Mr. Hara,
Yes.
Mr. Kucera,
Yes.
Mr. Nushai,
Yes.
Ms. Redmond,
Yes.
Mr. Solomon,
Same.
and Mr. Tinlin.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll open for public discussion, but seeing no public, I guess the mayor and councilor has them all over there.
Yeah. That room's a lot, got some people in it.
Okay, then I'll close public discussion, and we can move on to discussion of the ground floor parking.
Yes, I put together a little memo for you here, and I don't intend to keep you all night with the discussion. I think, we want to kind of just sort of start the discussion and kind of figure out where we are on this issue. So initially, the city manager raised the possibility of allowing ground floor parking as a way to accommodate parking requirements for multifamily residential uses while occupying less land. The concept was brought up very generally. Separately, we have had the issue been raised by a couple of applicants, one about 2 years before the topic was raised by the city manager. That was a DOA project. It was just obviously not going to work on the piece of property that was being proposed on. So we haven't heard from them ever since. More recently, there's a smaller scale project in the CMD district that was bringing up the issue. When it distributed the draft master plan update, City Council did ask PC to consider the issue in a motion. I've actually got the motion here if anybody wants to see it. Actually, we'll just pass it around. So that is why we're talking about it. And we feel that, it was originally brought up as something to kind of slip into the master plan at the end of the process. And We think we can discuss the issue now. There's obviously interest coming from the city council side of things, so let's just have the discussion and see where we land, and that's gonna kind of determine whether or not anything happens with the master plan. But when I put together this memo, it was kind of okay, I gotta put together a memo real quick in time for the meeting. So I didn't go into like a ton of depth here. I really was just trying to set the table. So at present, the zoning ordinance doesn't prohibit ground floor parking in a building. The development standards of the city center and CMD districts require that liner use when you're on a major thoroughfare. So you can't have parking all the way right up to the curb on the ground floor in those instances. So that would apply to the vast majority of sites in both those districts. The ordinance doesn't offer any incentive to place the parking under the building. Ultimately, if we were to make a change there, we really have to think about the goal of the change and the geographic scope of where it would apply. So you've got CMD, city center, the core residential doesn't offer residential uses at the scale where you'd put the parking at the ground floor. You might have a garage or something, but like individual unit garages. But you can't build an apartment building in that district, so I don't think we'd be worried about that. But then you've got the RM1, RM1 district. And that's the other place where you might be looking at it. So when we look at the CMD district, for instance, that's located mostly on the periphery of downtown, has a maximum building height of 30 feet and 2 stories. You could potentially look at saying, well, you could do 30 feet and 2 stories or 30 feet and 3 stories if the ground floor is parking. And then you get a 30-foot building still, same height, but you have 3 floors, one of which is parking. Might make a lot of sense for, say, a smaller project where you've got garages for each of the units rather than like an apartment building or something where that's not going to be enough height on the ground floor. You'd need 14 feet of clearance for vehicles and things, generally speaking, for a larger parking structure. But individual garages, they don't have to be 14 feet tall. So,
Joe, I'm sorry, can you, are the streetscape and the liner use, what is that like in the CMD?
it's the same as in the city center. If you're on Main or 14 Mile, you have to have the liner use along the full frontage of the building.
Okay,
If you're on, like, let's say Bowers or something, you would not have to have that liner use back there.
So that's an interesting point of clarification. So when I'm looking at the map, like CMD, that whole district, it doesn't look like anything touches 14 or Main. So
Yeah, a lot of it does, actually.
this I'm looking at the city center obviously does.
Yeah.
But it looks like most of those are tucked behind. Like off
CMD.
of Lincoln, am I looking at something wrong?
It might
Well-
be an old map, maybe.
Yeah, because CMD, for instance, the Renshaw is zoned CMD. So is Old Port.
Yeah, like southwest of
Okay,
14.
I just realized this is an older map because everything's,
Oh, yeah. If
'Cause
you've got, if
CMD
you've got
didn't
an
exist
older
for a while.
map, the boundaries would be pretty different.
okay.
But yeah, frontage along Florence is a good example of CMD zoning that is not on a major
Right.
thoroughfare. But a lot of it's on Main and 14 Mile. You look at the city center district, you have a building height that's 42 feet and 3 stories if the third floor is set back 10 feet from the front property line. I guess you could offer a 4th story if the ground floor minus the liner use was parking. You'd still be able to fit all those floors within that 42. I mean, those two examples are kind of basically looking at, well, can you do this without like massively increasing the bulk of what you're building? The trade-off of course, would be that the city gets more open space or green space on those properties. And you could, of course, add additional height in both of those circumstances or in the RM1 district to accommodate under-building parking, which is another possibility. I haven't provided any language at this point. One thing I did want to note is that I did look around at other ordinances in this area. I looked most deeply into Ferndale, Birmingham, Royal Oak, and Troy. And there's nobody's really doing anything with this. There's nothing in any ordinances about. I mean, basically, nobody's prohibiting it. Nobody's saying you can't do ground floor parking in a building and then build above it. But the only thing I really even saw in any of those ordinances about it was Birmingham, which has the same liner use standard we have. That you got to have the 20-foot depth of liner use along the front of the building if you're in downtown, and the parking can't be up against the curb, essentially. So there's really not a whole lot of reference points for this in terms of, language. It's
Joe, I
mostly
found a
matter
lot
of,
in Florida.
well, yeah, I mean,
Well, and I wanted to visually see what does that necessarily look like?
there's a great example in Royal Oak at the corner of 11 Mile and Main on the northwest corner there. That's a building with, I want to say it has 3 stories of apartments above parking. And the parking comes right up to the curb. It's it's got like a wall and everything. You're not just looking at a bunch of cars parked. But that's the best example I can think of that's within, 10 minutes of here. It's not super common in this area. You do see it in certain other parts of the country more often. Berkeley had a proposal for something like that many years ago, but it never got approved. And they wound up doing something at a somewhat smaller scale.
I think Florida has other intent too, right, with the hurricanes and stuff that they
Well,
are
yes.
just building second
Well,
story.
yeah, it
right.
helps if you don't have any habitable space on the ground floor in a
Right.
lot of Florida, because, you might get a storm surge. And
Yeah.
it's better if it swamps the cars than in someone's house.
Yeah. Putting together an ordinance for it, I wanted to be able to visualize, is there a way that we can get also how big the garage space needs to be in order to fit X amount of cars? Because I feel like it's
Sure.
important to consider if we look at Roth, for example, in that size of a building, how many spots would we get in that building to, go another story potentially up, just as an example? The cost, to help us all kind of weigh the cost benefit in what we can actually attribute to saying we're adding to the parking in Clausen. I think I'm very much in support of discussing this, but I really want to be able to kind of get to numbers and know what exactly that means.
Sure.
Especially if we consider, I think it's a 20% commercial. And I don't expect you to have the answers now, but these are things that I think of moving forward.
Right.
If we have a 20% commercial, so 80% of that building, how many spots do we get out of that 80%?
Sure. So, let me start with this. So, to get 90-degree parking spaces, you need 60 feet of width. So you're going to have space, maneuvering space. So that's 60 feet that takes up. Your spaces are all 9 feet wide. If they're in a building, you're going to have pilasters and walls. So you're going to need a little extra space for the last spaces so that cars can get in and out of them. And you're going to have a little extra space for those pilasters. Those are probably going to be every, 10 spaces or something like that. So let's say to get 10 spaces, we're going to add to 90 feet. We'll probably add another 10 feet. So 100 by 60 is going to get you 2 bays of 10 spaces, essentially. That's a pretty good ballpark to start with. So you're looking at, what was that, 6,000 square feet, right? To get to
20 spaces?
20 spaces.
6,000. Now, in your experience, do you find that something that's, well, in 20 spaces is not something to like, dismiss, right? That's substantial. Do you find that's substantial enough to be something that developers are going to look for and implement?
It is possible. Like I said, we've had a couple people ask about it in the past, so it's not like it's unheard of for developers, and it's certainly, like, it's a lot cheaper than, like, digging into the ground to put spaces below grade. Because, to put a space below grade with modern construction costs is like $5,000 a space. It's
Wow.
a lot of money. Structured parking is more like $35,000 a space.
That's what I read. That's
Yeah.
expensive.
It is. It's very expensive. There's got to be some benefit that you're getting out of it to justify the cost.
Well,
certain.
so that was kind of where I was going with this is, are we thinking, and is it something we should consider that the intent behind admin and council, maybe not even well thought out, but is that we would somehow give leniency on space and offer this as a trade of some sort, as an incentive, because I know, I went back to our city parking study, and they talked a lot about what we need. Is that something that we're looking to kind of counter that potential need? Because, like you said, it's so expensive. If we put this off for 30 years, we could potentially be paying $35,000 a parking spot in a parking garage. So just wondering where that happy medium is at.
Sure, yeah. That really is the main question is, okay, if we're going to, if this is something that we're looking for, what are we willing to give in exchange for someone doing it? And is there something else that we want to get out of it as well? So I mentioned, more open space on a lot as one potential benefit that you could get out of moving the parking under the structure. So is there a balance we could strike between giving them some kind of bonus for putting the parking under the building? What shape would that bonus take? And then to balance that bonus, could we get a little additional open space on the lot, for instance? So there's like a little bit of a balancing act there.
Did you say there were $50,000 per parking spot to go underground?
To go underground, yeah.
Yeah. I think that's the trade-off that can be made with developers to not allow them to make them go underground and to give them the tax abatements that they give out for free, the hundred thousands of dollars, whatever they give every year. Because I've seen all over the world, that's what they do. They bring this 100-story towers and they go all underground, zero parking on the road.
Sure.
All Paris is built like that, goddamn.
Birmingham has that as well. I've seen it in Birmingham, Detroit, right, the underground.
Yeah, Birmingham, particularly on North Old Woodward, when you're going down that hill there, there's a bunch of buildings that have like a lower level parking area
Sure.
with the offices above.
I'm sorry, Mr. Tinlin, were you trying to ask something? Because I
No.
did see your hand go up,
No.
so I don't want to keep,
No, I'm waiting, so.
you can go ahead.
I just want to go
already
back to the original question of the city council, because they asked us just to insert in the master plan, just a study be done. Or does this body want to kind of move past that and just ask for a study to be done so we can look at ordinance changes? That was my questions.
They asked for a study, you said?
Yeah, in their actual motion, they just wanted us
For
to
us to
insert,
study it.
to have a study noted in the master plan for underground parking.
Oh.
That was the original request. Or do we just want to move as a body, saying that's a good idea, and we want a study done by Joe for all those different variables?
I mean, I interpreted it a little bit differently, but before I ask that or bring that up, just so I'm completely clear, is the master plan able to be changed at this moment? Can we add language to it?
Yes, your last opportunity to insert something into the master plan or change content is the public hearing.
Okay.
We have not had the public hearing yet, so it is a possibility.
So my interpretation of, I think it was Councilmember Shepherd's point of view was that there's a lot of properties in Clausen that are currently vacant. And maybe one of the reasons they continue to be vacant is because developers cannot find a compromise for those sites, given the existing parking, shall we say, requirements. So where the master plan is coming out, maybe this is too coarse, but does the master plan prioritize reducing unused lots? Like, are we trying to develop unused lots or vacant lots? If there's a section in the master plan, I think Glenn's idea was, put in that plan that we are literally planning through ordinance and language in the master plan to minimize vacant lots by modernizing some standards of parking. So if it's not in the plan, I suggest we have that sort of spirit if we are in agreement of such a thing. And then as to actually how to carry out it, yes, I guess there's the concept of we should pay someone to do a parking study. But I think we already know there's not enough parking. The study's just going to quantify how little or how much we're underfunded in terms of parking. I think the meat and the potatoes of this is the ordinance. We need to really look at our ordinances. To me, it's currently very well controlled by the parking calculator and the efficiency limit, 10% limit. If you abide by those two things currently, I think there's enough parking for the development. Now, is there profitability for the developer that they want? This is a different question. But first space, do we agree that the master plan should address the vacant lots per Councilmember Shepherd?
I'll
I
just,
think that was his question, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. And with that, just that mention too, the recent PUD across the street where they were restricted by parking, when they first came to us, it was 20 lots they wanted, parking spots they wanted us to waiver. And their solution was efficiencies, right? Then we got in a big discussion about density of that development too. So if we allowed underground parking and that type of development, would that help? From a density standpoint, because how they get around the parking requirements, right, is they just make the studio apartments and they get less parking spots. So I was
Yeah,
wondering if that
that's-
could help. If we,
That's a fair point, I think. Can we answer your first,
Sure.
both of your first questions?
Yep.
I do agree with what I think you said. I don't know if you said it, that I would rather address this by ordinance. I think I've kind of already made that point clear, but I still believe that it's something that we should truly look at before putting it in a master plan to where it can be used as by way of PUD, to truly look at, not putting the cart before the horse. We have an ordinance where we're looking at every single zoning area and what that might look like and what we would like or what we don't think would be conducive to Clausen. So I don't know if we're doing a vote on that, but I'm with whoever thinks that. Ordinance, not master plan.
So leave the master plan language completely alone?
That would be my vote if we're voting. Are we voting on that?
There's no motion on the
we had a
table.
motion
Yeah,
first.
Joe, is this a motionable thing?
It's basically a discussion, so I don't know that we
But it was-
have to go to that point with it.
It was city council.
Yeah, I mean, it's more of a show of hands thing, I guess,
Okay.
than a motion thing.
But I'm hoping that you'll give, not necessarily you yourself, but through admin, will give city council a report that we are excited to discuss this further. If that's what everyone decides, my opinion would be like, we're excited to discuss it. It's not something we just are looking to gloss over. And we would like to give it the same amount of study we've given everything else we've put in our master plan. And we would really enjoy doing that and looking for opportunities. I don't know.
Is there anything in the master plan currently, Joe, that addresses vacant lot reductions?
I'm trying to think just.
I
from
was
my
just
own
kind of breezing
memory,
through
yeah.
it, just, I don't know that I saw that specific language, but on page 83, there's a framework for assessing and adjusting parking requirements. It's kind of an adjacent topic, right?
Yeah.
That's not exactly,
I think the downtown draft master plan is a little more direct about vacancy, 'cause I
Yeah.
think it's a little more in your face in the downtown.
But we could easily justify an ordinance, it'd be working towards our master plan goals if we were to study this further.
Yeah, I
Yes
think
or no?
so.
and just
Okay.
for clarity's sake, because I think somebody used the term, the city council asked us to study this, or, do.
Have a study?
Have a study about it. The actual language is to request the planning commission to begin discussion for additional detail on framework, so they use the term framework.
Sure.
On having first floor ground parking to the master plan. So just for clarity's sake and for everybody listening, that's the language that was used,
It's pretty much a discussion that they're looking for from us.
framework.
Our ordinance doesn't oppose this. We're not constricting any builder from doing this. I think what we're looking forward to is, what we're trying to find is something to incentivize them to do it. And I think Mr. Mushai mentioned tax abatements or something, as a city could come up with something like that.
As a bargaining chip, right?
I'm in favor of it. I think it's a good idea. I don't want to raise the building height, though. I don't want to give them a fourth-story building on it because of putting parking there. If we can keep our buildings at the same heights, I wouldn't oppose it.
It seems like there's three tools, well, really maybe only two, maybe three if we include the tax abatement. You can make the buildings taller to accommodate first floor parking. You can put something, and you can eliminate the first floor liner. Those are kind of like your choices. If you don't eliminate the first floor liner, I don't know where the cars would go. If you don't make the building taller, I don't know where you could go. So, I think another goal that the council had kind of loosely communicated in that meeting was they wanted developments in the future to go by the ordinances and not be so likely to be a PUD. So if our ordinances are good, they protect the residents from harm, and they promote developers to be, investing in the city. And my personal recollection of the PNC property, 150 North Main, was that the existing ordinances, were in conflict with the developer's goals because it required more parking. And it was only because we gave them a waiver essentially on the efficiency cap that it was able to be sold as, meeting the requirement. And I don't even know that we made that the incentive. I don't think we all got together and said, hey, let's waive the parking efficiency. It just sort of happened. And we looked the other way, which I don't think is textbook case the best way.
And we lost the battle on the ground floor retail on that one, too.
Agreed.
Our ordinance called for 100%,
They comply.
and we got like 65, I believe, on it.
They comply completely.
With an efficiency cap overruled.
That's not true.
They don't have they don't abide by the 10% efficiency cap.
Yes, they do.
They don't. They have way more than 10% efficiencies.
Yeah, they're about 35%.
Yeah. And because of
What was I gonna
that,
say?
just briefly, just because of that, right, we don't get 1.5 parking spaces per unit like we normally would for the majority of the complex, of the composition of the complex. So we lose spots. So it's true, they meet the parking lot calculator, but it was always the case that the parking spot calculator was used in harmony with the efficiency cap to make enough spaces for visitors and so forth. So anyway, all of this to say that if we're talking about an ordinance to incentivize developers to come here, we either get clever with the height or we get clever with the first floor liner. And I'm not going to make a motion to do either in this forum, but to me, those are the two immediate choices. And I think if we wanted to be surgical about it, and I don't want to go higher either, Mr. Chairman, but if we were to go higher, you better not do it next to a residential property where for sure you have 4 stories looking down on someone's backyard. But there may be properties, there may be districts, I don't know, where that isn't the case, where there's a significant setback to a resident, and maybe that makes sense. So those are my thoughts on this topic.
Yeah, and I mean, I agree with what's been said so far, but I always point to not just our own personal opinions of this board, but also the people in this community. And so the DDA has in their master plan some building height questions that they just surveyed about, which was helpful. So talking about what district you're in, but also particular lots that may be butted to residential, but there was, at least in the CMD, and this is just for record, a vast majority, over 70%, were okay with the idea of raising the limit from 2 stories to 3 stories. Now, when you talk about the city center already being at 3 and the potential of raising it to 4, it was pretty split down the middle with a lot of people not interested in that, probably looking at Royal Oak as an example. So I think it's just good for us to kind of keep that in our head, right? This is what our fellow residents think, and I think we are generally aligned that maybe there's potential in certain areas outside of the downtown to go up a little bit higher, but most people are not in favor, at least
Yeah.
in the city center.
Well, and I'm curious, because Joe, the way that Joe explained it earlier, it didn't sound like it was like an additional 10 or 15 feet when you would go up. So like 1 story might be only 10 feet versus, what we imagine. I think it might be helpful for further discussion, Joe, to
Sure.
break down exactly how high city center, how high would that take city center if we kept a commercial liner? Because I think that, I can't speak for DDA, but I think that DDA, and I think for the integrity of our downtown, we should keep a commercial liner at least partially, right? Not a whole 100%, obviously. But what that might look like in terms of feet, how many, sorry, Joe, to be like ranting to you, but like how many parking spaces does that give us? And what that actually looks like. So are we, Royal Oak, I don't know how high they're allowed to go. Is it only 4 stories? Because they seem a lot higher than 4 stories.
Well, and they're downtown. I don't know exactly what the regulation is, but they've got north of 11 Mile especially, they've got some very tall buildings there. The new one at the northeast corner of 11 Mile and Main actually does have some of that podium parking. They've got the liner essentially.
Yeah.
And the back of the building, there's parking underneath that whole thing.
I'll have to look at that. And maybe there's a site plan or something from that we can look at to see how many spots did they get there? What does that makeup look like? Because another thing that was put out by us in our survey to residents is the on-street parking. Something a lot of other cities don't have around us. But I do think that in order to, if that's really important to our residents, that we keep that on-street parking, not overnight, we really have to start looking towards other opportunities to get that infill parking taken care of in creative ways. So I'm supportive of this.
I wanted to ask a question following up on Mr. Najai. Is there any tool to, I guess, provide guidance on tax abatements in exchange for below-grade parking?
Well, that's hard because we're not allowed to consider those things as planning commissioners.
You could communicate it to council, though.
Okay.
I'm unaware of any such guideline. It just sort of happened last time that they,
We throw it back to council and let them find the solution to that.
But that would be already after we either approve or disapprove of a site plan. So I think that if we're going to offer that as an incentive, it's hard for us to do when we have lost mechanism of that. Does that make sense?
Kind of, yeah.
So I think it would be important to really define that if that's something we want to do.
I don't, I'm just asking the question, is there any guidance at all on tax abatement strategy?
Yeah, somebody should look into that and get
Yeah,
back to us
there
on
may
that.
be, I can certainly look it up and see.
When we're talking height, I believe our ordinance now is commercial liner on the ground floor. It's a 15-foot ceiling height, right, for commercial liner?
That's correct, yeah.
And the PUD settled on it, and I believe they came in at 13 feet. because
Yes, they wound
have
up at 13 feet. yeah.
Semi-commercial, and then they have some apartments too, so they settle at 13. If you're building a parking structure, you don't need a 13-foot ceiling on it, do you? I mean, how tall would a
Yeah.
parking garage have to be?
It depends a little bit on the circumstances. 10 feet, I think, is probably about your minimum for clearance. I'm just trying to think. I mean, I know I've been in parking garages where it was lower, like, I've definitely been in parking
Or if
garages
they
where it
put
was
it-
like 8 feet.
But building material, right?
Yeah.
They put it halfway
Yeah.
underground. I've seen some structures that do that.
Yes, you can do that, and that's definitely not as expensive as going all the
Yeah,
way
it's not fully
underground.
underground, but it's lower than.
Yeah, even if you just excavate down 2 feet or something, it can get you kind of,
I think that's a good idea, though. You're basically saying that if you are developing a property and you have an underground parking lot, we'll give you a little bit of an ease on the overall height structure to make it work.
Right.
Yeah,
I still want to keep the heights down as much as we can.
Sure.
yeah.
But for
This would
example,
do it if you're only 10 foot tall for a parking garage and 2 or 3 of that feet is underground.
yeah.
We're dropping the building down, yeah.
Yeah, and so I think there's 5 feet, let's just say there's 5 feet to be capitalized on in that's, for that reason alone.
But the problem is to get the builders to accept this, we have to give them something to make them want to do this.
Well, if I hear you right.
Right off the
we-
bat, they're not going to want to do it.
We could have a special ordinance that said, if you are putting in an underground structure, we'll give you 5 feet, throwing a number out there, additional bonus height to make your third floor work. And that gives you, it's not strictly speaking as tall as a normal building without an underground parking lot, but it gives them a little bit of lenience to get the kind of look they want for their floor height. And in the end, it might just be a couple feet higher. From a resident's perspective, I doubt you would notice. I would definitely notice a 4th story, but if I saw 5 feet taller, I'm not sure I would notice that.
That's
And,
the difference. The stories are, you're right.
Yeah.
yeah,
But if you add to the 3rd story, nobody's.
Well, and
there's
So
currently no
to-
such leniency, right? You're either
no,
at the
that's,
height
that's
or.
correct, yeah, yeah. There's no-
well, and that might be helpful. The undercutting a couple feet might help the commercial liner still meet, because I think it would be odd to have a commercial liner at 10 feet, because that would feel, I don't know, I guess I haven't, but a retail space at only 10 feet would feel very closed in, and I don't think that that's exactly what we'd look for downtown. But if we did go down 2 feet, I don't know, we're all just like brainstorming,
Sure,
right,
yeah,
Joe?
and that's what we're here for.
But if we did go down like 2 feet and accommodate that, does that even out? No, it kind of doesn't even out, does it? Yeah, how would we accommodate the commercial need for more than 10 feet would be something creatively, I don't know if there's a way to do that or not.
Sure.
Maybe with the inset, but you don't go in inset until the 3rd story, right? That,
Right, yeah.
Okay.
you don't- Yeah.
Setback, yeah, inside, yeah.
yeah.
Rooftop parking's out of the ballpark, right? I have parked on the top of a roof down in
Getting up
Detroit years
there
ago.
on the side, on a lot the size of a lot in Clawson would be awfully tough.
Oh my gosh.
Unless you had an elevator,
Drone.
then you could probably do it.
Those Carvana things.
We
that-
did have I did some work for Kegel Harbor, and they had a planned unit development come in, and their parking was in this big cube. And you like put your car like on a little platform, and then it like went in, and they moved it around on a platform, and like moved all the cars around in there. It was like this big automated thing. There's one downtown too. It's near the old Detroit Free Press building. But basically, like when you get up in the morning and you're going to work, it's like a vending machine. You go and you like put your thing in,
Yeah.
and your car comes out on this platform.
They're probably
It
pretty
was kind of
cheap.
crazy.
They're probably pretty cheap too, right?
Right, I was
Yeah,
gonna
oh
say,
yeah,
what
I'm
are
sure
the
it was
costs on
really
that?
affordable.
Yeah,
The rents in the upper floor penthouses of that building were eye popping. But
I popped.
yeah, it was a really interesting thing, but it didn't seem like it had a lot of practical application outside of that particular project.
So Joe, back to the original question, so we just have to have consensus that we want to proceed just with the study on ordinance
Yes, yeah, that's
recommendations and not
correct,
bother
yeah.
with the master plan, right?
Yeah,
Well, my thoughts were that you were trying to get feedback in order to start discussion about it as well. Is that right, Joe?
Yeah, and we can do a little more study and bring something back, and you can kind of look at what we've got and decide, all right, well, you know what, we're good to just develop an ordinance now and communicate that to council, or, all right, fine, we've done enough study at this point that we're comfortable inserting something into the master plan per council. And either way, I think we've done our work. And you're either gonna wind up with it in your master plan, or you're gonna wind up with an ordinance, one or the other.
Or
And you-
both.
And if you wind up with it in the master plan, you're probably gonna wind up with an ordinance eventually anyway,
So wait, who decides if it ends up in our ordinance?
Well, ultimately, that's between you and council.
Yeah.
You
Okay.
recommend
I'm
something to
not looking
them,
for a
and they
motion
take it.
today, but I would like to say, I would, after you have some time to review this, I would like to see the language be included in the master plan that tries to develop vacant lots, and strategically do so by optimization of our ordinances. Because ultimately, I really want to give council every reason to say no to a PUD in the future. I want them to say, no, we have a master plan that's trying to address vacant lots, and we've already optimized with great effort and discussion our ordinances to protect the residents from, insufficient setbacks, insufficient parking, and we've cleverly manipulated the numbers and the requirements for liners and heights and underground parking and all of this to try to drive the right behaviors so that a PUD honestly isn't necessary. If those two things happen together, where the master plan covers that and we have new ordinances that allow it, I think that's a win. And I think that gives council a tool to basically push back on the PUD. But this is just my opinion. Yeah.
So you're proposing that we propose to council to change our master plan language to accommodate the vacant buildings?
Reduce vacant lots. A dedicated effort to reduce vacant lots is I think, an agreed upon problem. There's multiple public comments saying, when are you going to do something about Burger
Oh, I
King?
agree
When are
with
you gonna
vacant
do something
lots,
about
but
it?"
I just don't know if council will feel like we've fully considered. Joe, do you have an opinion on our correspondence with council?
Well, I mean, for right now, your correspondence to council is, we've heard your request and we're studying the issue. And that's it right now. We don't know exactly what we're going to recommend, but after we look at this issue again, I think we will have an idea of what we want to do, and then you're gonna, as a group, gonna have to come to some consensus as to whether or not you do put something in your master plan, or if you just move forward with ordinance development.
Okay, so you want us to study this before we have our master plan hearing?
Yeah, exactly. And the master plan hearing is gonna be sometime in May, so we've got opportunities between now and then.
Understood.
To come to some sort of consensus as a group as to what our path forward is.
And can I, if no one else was trying to talk, I didn't want to overlook your point about the green space, especially with a lot of multifamilies coming in. I think a lot of them really truly lack a place for people to have a communal space, have a place to take their dogs, have a place to just maybe have their kids outside on the grass for a minute. Just because we didn't discuss that in detail, I would love to know what implementing and trading an incentive for green space might look like, even in city center, because I know that they've got a different streetscape than other areas, but I'd be really interested to see what that might look like. I think it's really important because we just keep developing and we never get that green back once it's gone. So that's my feelings, at least.
Yeah, I echo that, right? I mean, the worst thing we could do is provide them the option for parking on the first floor, raise the requirements, and they just still maximize the space for profit, and we
And
don't
it's
get
all
anything out of
asphalt
it.
still
So,
in the end.
I don't know
I
how
know a
we,
project like that.
so whatever we gotta do, Joe, to figure out some type of language, maybe if there's an example you can provide next time we meet, that'd be great.
Sure.
In less than 30 days. Just just looking at the calendar, right?
April 22nd, I don't think is an unreasonable
Alright.
target for that.
Do you feel like this was helpful,
Yes.
Joe? Okay.
Yeah, I feel like I got some good insight into where everybody is what everybody's thinking, and we'll come back with some other things. I think we could do a nice illustration just showing like here's what those floor heights look like and what the total building height comes out to if we do this, and this, and that kind of stuff. So, give you something to look at.
And parking spots gained, maybe too?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay.
We could even look at a couple of recently approved footprints and just show you like here's what the parking that fits in there.
Oh,
with
that'd be
the
cool.
with the liner use and without the liner use. You
Right.
know?
That'd be great, yeah.
Very
I think that would be
specifically,
useful.
this, I'm going to call it a fancy hybrid. This thing Mr. Chairman was talking about, where if you have an underground parking structure, 8 feet, we'll call it, what would a first draft ordinance look like juxtaposed to what we have currently that would give a little bit of ease to the developer to maybe have a 10-foot first floor commercial liner and a few extra feet for their floors, their residential floors, how preposterous does that?
Are you saying underground or ground floor?
I love this.
Nate, were you talking about underground or ground floor?
If you had a underground parking structure, which is what we want, which is what we need for the kind of lot sizes that we have, the best case scenario, I think, is for underground parking. But it comes at a cost. And it's a double whammy if we say you can't have 3 or 4 or 4 stories, for example. But if you could have a partial first floor liner, and then your second floors could be, the overall structure could be a little bit taller than it would normally be allowed to be, because we're stealing a few feet from the underground parking structure, and we're stealing a few feet from the first floor commercial liner, and that gives you your, I don't know what it is, 10 feet or whatever it is for the second and third floor. Overall, it's more than it would be allowed currently, but 5 feet, it seems like it gives them a little bit of leniency to do the floor plans that they need to do for profitability, while at the same time providing for the parking. So this hybrid concept is, I see it in my head. It's hard to describe verbally, but
I find a hard time, to be honest, if an underground costs $50,000 a spot, to justify the cost of that for 20 spots, I mean, in a typical building, we're looking at more than 20 spots. I wonder what we might have to trade it in order to incentivize that. And I'm not shooting you down, but I think we should be real about what, and maybe it is by a tax abatement, but really, if it's something we're looking to implement and have people use, then I think that we need to be real about the cost of it and where we have to be at an incentive to actually get people to implement that. Because I don't think it'll happen by way of, no, I'm not trying to be rude, but like by 5 feet. I don't think that would be enough incentive to make those numbers happen. I could be wrong, but it's something definitely worth kind of breaking down and looking at.
right. So I stand by my words. How preposterous would it be?
A fair question.
Maybe a lot preposterous.
Maybe all.
No
Joe, just
taxes
before-
ever.
Before we wrap, because I was looking around online for the most recent copy of the master plan, one of your pages, I think it was the one where we had the progress updates, where people could provide feedback, and it was through your company's website. The link no longer works for the master. There's still like click here to review the master plan draft. So just so you know, when I clicked on it, it went to a page and basically there was an error.
I will investigate the dead link and.
So I would either,
look
yeah,
again.
take off the page, or fix the link. Obviously, I already had issues looking up the most current zoning plan, so it's like, as much as we can clarify for people who are just using Google to find things, that you're looking at the most recent page.
Yes, I will investigate that. It's probably, we had it like hosted on a server and the
It
link
looks like
expired
that
or something.
it was being linked to, something internal.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Those things do expire. So I'm guessing that's what happened.
No problem. Just wanna
Thank you
make
for
sure.
bringing it up, though, because, yeah, we gotta fix that.
When I was looking forward to you asking when we would have our first meeting on the master plan, you know, talking about the actual implementation, and I thought that you might ask that tonight, because are we waiting for that to actually be past the May meeting before we start having those monthly meetings, Joe? Or is that something we are looking to kind of start implementing now?
I think that we can do that. We can, I mean, it's only like a month and a half, so I think we can start that after the public hearing.
Okay.
But, yeah, we'll probably try to hit the ground running, right after that.
Yeah, I think it's a good example. Like, we didn't have enough agenda items last time to meet, but there's so much work that we really do have that we could have pivoted to an action item, right? And just have a discussion, even if we didn't have, you know, something that immediately came out of it or a reason to discuss it. It would just give us an opportunity to touch base on progress of our recent goals, so.
Sure.
Unless Joe needed time to maybe put together an ordinance for parking underground and,
Might have been the reason.
Okay, did they give you enough background information for you?
Yeah, I think I'm good.
And are we all done on that one? Then we can move on to the planner's report.
I don't really have anything else to add. Sorry, my computer's.
Okay, then we'll scratch planner's report. How about staff report and training opportunities? That's what Nick usually gives. We have it in our paperwork.
Yeah, if you have any questions, I can let Nick know what they are, I guess.
Yeah.
There's not a ton going on right now, kind of in that winter doldrum at the moment. So just not a lot of activity.
Is Noble Fish going all the way to Burger Bar?
Yeah, the Noble Village concept takes up that entire area.
The pastry shop, all the way,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, yeah,
They're
White
combined.
Wolf, that's all becoming one space.
I did go in there today because they at least reopened White Wolf, and it looked very nice. It looks like they're still obviously working on the two adjacent spaces. So White Wolf, that space is closed. The old record store is closed still.
Yeah.
So they're really cramming a lot in to make it work, but they were doing a fine job in terms of still having the pastries and the coffee and everything was good. But you can get your sushi and your coffee back to back right now.
Yeah.
It's all
And if you're
crammed in
looking
there.
for flip side, it's next to the Berkeley Public Library now.
Yeah, it did move over to your town.
Just offhand on the TCO issue, do you know what 1331 West Maple is?
1331
Probably
West
Culver's.
Maple.
I think it is
Culver's, maybe?
Culver's.
I am almost positive that's
Oh,
called.
okay, they have a temporary right now. They're still doing
Yeah.
exterior site improvements.
Yeah.
So they don't have a full CFO as of yet, but they're still good until 5/15/25. Okay, I'm good with that. Everybody else good with that?
Yes, confirming that is Culver's, yeah.
Yeah, okay. We don't have a legal update because our lawyer's in the other room. And before we adjourn, does anyone have any subject they want to bring up, or?
I actually have a couple, because I'm sure everyone else did receive an email from
Oh,
a
yeah.
resident about the short-term rental,
Yep.
which I don't think it was on our agenda, maybe I misread it, but she was talking about it being on our agenda today. I'm not sure if it was supposed.
So I believe it's going to be on the April 22nd agenda. There was some background discussion that kept the public hearing that was set from going forward, but that's resolved as far as I'm aware. So I think Nick sent me a note here, I believe. Yeah, STR ordinance is scheduled for the April 22nd meeting is what he says.
April 22nd with Planning Commission or with the?
Planning Commission.
Okay, because the last I knew, we had language and we discussed, and then we sent it to council. Did council send it back to us again, or?
I think they did.
No, they haven't sent us, we haven't had our hearing for the
Okay,
version of it, yeah.
okay.
I
And
think they declined to adopt it, though, right?
They did decline to adopt the initial one that was sent to them. yes.
But we've discussed since then, I believe, correct?
Yeah, we
Yeah,
made some
we've
changes.
discussed
We
it since
removed-
then, and
There was a fence involved. We took the fence
And they
We-
were
Jotted
concerned
it.
about the
Yeah.
inspection.
Inspections.
Yeah.
And then on April 22nd, we'll be having a hearing on the revised version of it that we came up
Yeah.
with, and
Yeah.
So I had some questions, but I will spare you, Joe, and save those for Nick at the next meeting, maybe. Another, I guess, question I had was, I know we've talked a lot about the most recent PUD. I know that took about a year to get passed through council. I was wondering if us as a planning commission kind of take a look at what we approved versus what city council approved to see, obviously, we want to be great here at providing to them something that they're going to approve. And maybe there's some type of work study that we can do, just a side-by-side of like what we approved and what they approved so that we can do better about, actually implementing the vision that they're looking for and negotiating the things that we, that they ended up negotiating that, my thoughts are that should have been done by us a little bit, that's a lot of time that they used that we could have done a little bit more on. Is that something that's possible, Joe?
I can relay that to Nick, and I guess, I'm pretty sure he could put together the plan that was sent to them versus the plan that wound up being approved.
Do you think that would be valuable for us to go back and look at and study? Is that something that you ever see happen with planning commissions, that they kind of reevaluate things that do or don't get passed by? I know I've seen Troy do it before.
I mean, I haven't really seen too many planning commissions do it, but, I mean, there's not really a reason you couldn't, and,
I second
Yeah.
it as a good idea. I know it's
Okay,
not a formal
thanks.
motion, but I think it's worthwhile. I mean, I know I personally didn't approve that plan when it left here. And I think there was a little bit of a just miss when that came to us, right, in terms of a few items. So it would be helpful, especially with, new and returning members, just to go through.
Well, and I think my thoughts are maybe it would empower us a little bit, because I know that at that time especially, we had some newer members that were kind of like, well, if we don't do it, city council will. And it's like, well, we should probably kind of try to advocate a little bit better. And it would be a great learning, I think, opportunity for I'm not trying to, but for me as well, right? How can we better go about this next time? So,
I don't think it's going to take up too much time, so
okay.
I see it as valuable. I don't know.
Well, thank you.
And Joe, you mentioned the April 22nd meeting a few times. Do we have items for the April 8th meeting? Do we anticipate that will be?
we don't have any items for it. There's a likelihood that we'll have a site plan for the 22nd, just based on when things get submitted, but there is nothing at the moment for April 8th.
That works for me. I will not be able to attend. I've been going through busy travel, so I'm hopeful that I won't miss anything.
Okay.
Okay, any further comments?
Yeah, just on short-term rentals, it's fine to talk about it later, but, we canceled the last meeting. And there are residents clearly by that letter who are negatively affected by our lack of ordinances to protect them against nuisances. And I think this is the second time out of the same site that has happened. So I just don't want to be too lenient with our cadence. I think it needs to get addressed. And I don't know where this particular property falls. I don't even know if they're an official registered Airbnb. I don't know.
I was hopeful that somebody from administration reached out because there was direct questions about number of violations and what the next steps are, because it should be addressed, I think, in that case.
Yeah.
And that is with our current ordinance. I mean, if there's already
Right.
violations on the
Perhaps
books.
so.
Well, if there is an address with the police, when does that become an enforcement? Was there a citation? Those are things that are very important to know. I agree with you, but I
Yeah.
thought Nick would have to
So,
answer.
if we can put her letter, the resident's letter, in the next packet, just for the public to review, I think it would be helpful. And then, Joe, do you know if neighboring cities are sharing their master plan updates with us?
They are legally obligated to. I haven't seen one come through in a while. We only have two directly abutting cities, Troy and Royal Oak. So we don't have a lot of communities that are obligated to send them to us. I think Madison Heights did when it updated its plan, just because they're close enough. But Troy and Royal Oak, I'm not sure when the last time they did their master plan updates.
Royal Oak's
if they were-
doing one, I think.
Well, exactly, and I've seen some signs up, save single-family homes. And it turns out they are having a master plan update. I think it would be excellent to maybe get a copy of that distributed to the planning commissioners and city council as well. From what I understand, there's a very radical alteration to their zoning map to, I don't think it's something we would tolerate here, frankly. But it would be good to review it nonetheless, as a commission, I think, especially if they're legally obligated to share that with us.
Yeah, I don't, do we know if they have a draft yet, or?
I don't,
Because when they get to their 63-day comment period, they'd have to send it to us.
yeah.
But I don't know if they've got a draft and have asked council to distribute it yet, or what.
Either way, it seemed interesting that we had to share ours to neighboring cities, but I've never heard of us getting one, so.
Well, and so the point of that, Joe, would be to say, I've noticed certain cities will put certain things on their border that other cities might not love so much. Is the point of sharing those to get actual feedback from the planning commission, from residents? Like, what, in the past, has that been effectively used in what way would we as a commission provide feedback to them? Is that a possibility, or?
It is a possibility. So you're supposed to get 2 communications from a neighboring community. One is the notice of intent to plan. I don't know when they started, so I don't recall if we received anything like that. But then also, when they get to their 63-day comment period, you're supposed to get a notice that the plan is available for review and comment. And at that point, you can, as a community, provide feedback to them on what you're seeing in the plan. I've had a lot of communities receive these notices from their neighboring communities over the last, 10, 11, almost 11 years that I've been doing this. And a lot of times it's just, it seems like it's pretty good for, as far as how it interacts with us. Every once in a while, there is something that bugs a community that's receiving it. I remember one township I was working for got a master plan where the neighboring city was planning on annexing a whole corner of the township, which they were not too happy about, so they sent a communication about that. Yeah, I mean, it's whenever they do have their draft and their comment period, the thing to do would be for,
Just
PC members to get
to weigh
a
in,
link
just
to
because I
it.
was just doing a quick search, right? It looks like they're right at the end of the process. So
Okay.
they started in early 2023 with their update. Their actually required public hearing looks like it's taking place on Tuesday, April 8th at 7 p.m. And it's still loading, so it looks like quite a large document. But
Public
if you go to
hearing.
planroyaloak.com, you can view the draft master plan.
So, I don't know if we received a notice from them or not, or if it was received by a person who didn't know what to do with it, so. or
Because if they
what.
already have an April 8th, then that means they're already in their 63
They're already
days.
in their comment
Yeah.
period
Yeah.
at this
That's what
point,
I'm seeing,
yeah.
at least. from-
So I think it'd be worth, 15 minutes of conversation or discussion next meeting, but even if that doesn't happen, I encourage every one of you to review it, because it's a big deal. And I think we'll be better for it, learning what they're doing, so.
Well, yeah, I mean, they're our neighbors, so I agree. And Joe, when the other cities that you've worked with give a comment, does it come by way of the planning commission? Is that something that us as a planning commission would vote and move forward with sending a correspondence, or is that by way of administration?
It's happened both ways in the past that I've seen. So I have seen planning commissions put put together their own communication to neighboring communities, and I've also seen administration do it both under its own initiative and with the advisement of the planning commission. So I've seen it kind of happen in 3 different ways, I guess.
Okay.
If we're completed with our comments, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion support, may I have roll call, please?
All right, Sinlin,
Yes.
Solomon,
Yes.
Redmond,
Yes.
Ushai,
Yes.
Kucera,
Yes.
Para.
Yes.
Thank you all, adjourned.